Welcome to the Blanco Wellness Podcast. Thank you for being here. Take a breath, settle in. And if this episode finds you in a difficult place, know that you are exactly where you need to be. There is a particular pressure that most people carry quietly, and it arrives not from outside, but from within. The pressure to be further along than you are, to have processed what has happened faster than it can honestly be processed, to have returned to functioning before functioning is actually available, to be, in the most common and most exhausting phrase, fine. We live inside a culture that has a complicated relationship with difficulty. It acknowledges that hard things happen, but it is impatient with how long the hard things last. Bounce back, stay positive, keep moving, focus on what you can control. And while there is something worth keeping in each of those instructions, applied too early, applied as a demand rather than an invitation, they can do something quietly harmful. They can teach a person to be at war with their own experience, to treat grief as a problem to be solved rather than a season to be lived. To rush the very process that, rushed, tends only to go underground and resurface later, heavier, less legible, further from its source. The Taoists observed something in the natural world that is worth sitting with honestly. Winter does not apologize for being winter. The tree does not force its own blossoming before the conditions are ready. It rests, it conserves, it turns inward, doing the invisible work of preparation that spring requires. And then when the time comes, not when it is demanded, not when the calendar says it should, life returns. Not because the tree forced it, because the tree trusted the season it was actually in. Human beings are not trees. But the principle holds. There are seasons in a life that are genuinely winter. Seasons of loss, of grief, of the particular exhaustion that follows something breaking. A relationship, a hope, a version of the future that had been real enough to build a life around. And in those seasons, what the self needs is not urgency. It is not optimism applied from the outside, like a bandage over something that has not yet been properly cleaned. What it needs is the thing that is most difficult to offer in a culture organized around productivity and forward motion. Permission. Permission to be exactly where you are, for as long as it honestly takes. The Buddhist tradition makes a distinction here that is practically important. There is the first arrow, the event itself, the loss, the pain, the genuine difficulty that arrived. This arrow strikes, and it hurts, and there is nothing to be done about the hurting except to feel it honestly. And then there is the second arrow, the one we fire at ourselves in response. The story that says, I should be over this by now. Other people have had it worse and managed better. My sadness is inconvenient. My grief is too much. My need for rest is weakness. The first arrow belongs to life. The second is optional. And the second tends to hurt longer and more consistently than the first because we keep firing it. There are periods in a life when getting out of bed is genuinely enough. When making a meal, answering a message, stepping outside for 10 minutes, managing a conversation, any of these things can represent the full measure of what was available that day. Not failure, the full measure of what was available. And the practice of recognizing that, of meeting those small movements with the same quality of acknowledgement that larger ones receive, is not lowering a standard. It is being honest about what a difficult season actually costs, and refusing to add the cost of contempt to what is already heavy enough. There is something worth saying about time, because the relationship between grief and time is consistently misunderstood. Time does not heal automatically. What heals is what happens within the time, the gradual, often invisible work of processing, of making meaning, of slowly and without force finding a way to carry what happened rather than being buried beneath it. This work cannot be rushed, it cannot be scheduled, it does not respond to impatience or to the well-meaning pressure of people who love you and would prefer you to be okay. It responds to something gentler. To the same quality of patient, non-resistant attention that the Taoists found in water, the willingness to move around what cannot be moved directly, to find the space that is available, to keep going without forcing. Think about the people who have come through the most genuinely difficult seasons with something intact, not unchanged, not unaffected, but intact. Almost without exception, they share one quality. They allowed it. They did not perform recovery before recovery was real. They did not pretend toward the light before their eyes had actually adjusted. They moved slowly and took the time that the season actually required, and they arrived somewhere genuine rather than somewhere performed. That arrival, genuine, unhurried, built from honest ground, tends to hold in a way that the faster version never does. One day, something shifts. It does not announce itself. It arrives the way most true things arrive, quietly, without fanfare, in an ordinary moment that you were not expecting. The music sounds different. The morning feels lighter. You find yourself curious about something, or laughing at something, or wanting something in a way that felt impossible not long ago. Not because you forced it. Not because you finally did the right thing, or thought the right thoughts, or applied sufficient positive energy to the situation. Because healing, given the room it needs and the time it requires, does its own quiet work, beneath everything, without your management, at its own honest pace, and one day you notice it has been happening all along. As we close today, I want to leave you with one simple thing to carry. Whatever season you are in right now, you are allowed to be in it, not performing the next one before it has arrived, not condemning yourself for not being further along, not comparing your interior experience to anyone else's exterior appearance. Simply here, in the season that is actually present, with whatever that season honestly requires. Rest when you need rest, grieve when you need to grieve. Move slowly when slowly is what is true. And trust, not blindly, but based on the evidence of every difficult season that has ever eventually passed, that this one will too. Not because it will stop having mattered, because you will have carried it long enough to know how. It is okay not to be okay. It always has been. And the healing that arrives at its own pace, without being hurried, is the only kind that genuinely holds. Thank you for being here with me today. Until next time, be well.